simt cumva că ceea ce mă poate cumva face credibil în fața dumneavoastră acum este dubla mea alonjă, dubla mea identitate asumată. Adică, pe de o parte, ca istoric de artă angajat în cercetarea artei medievale românești din Moldova, patronată de către Ștefan cel Mare și toți boierii și toată elita aceea moldovenească și, într-un sens mult mai larg, un cercetător în principiu al artei românești, însă un istoric al artei românești care se simte dator față de originea armeană asumată, față de care am încercat cumva să prestez omagiu printr-o carte care e o carte de popularizare, patrimoniul artistic armenesc în România, dar care mi-a pricinuit întâlnirea cu domnul profesor Chookaszian. Așa cum ați văzut, limba oficială astăzi rămâne limba engleză. Prezentarea domnului profesor va fi în limba engleză. Așa că, din respect față de domnul profesor Chookaszian, eu însumi mai departe voi vorbi în engleză. Dear Professor Chookaszian, welcome among us, and please allow me, first of all, to say my word of welcome and to praise you as one should, and to express the deep gratitude which comes not only from myself, but I'm sure from the whole representatives of the Armenian community in Romania in your presence and from this graceful intention of offering us now today a lecture regarding the Armenian heritage in Romania. Professor Chookaszian, for those of you whom perhaps did not know already, is the chair of the head of the Department of Art History in the university, the State University in Erevan, and he is the leading figure in the academic research regarding Armenian art, not only in Armenia but also recognized as such worldwide. Professor Chookaszian had the excellent opportunity of studying even for his PhD in Moscow, in a center of excellency for art history and especially for this Caucasian and Oriental arts, European arts also, of course. And this enabled Professor Chookaszian with an infallible methodology. And his research was acclaimed as such worldwide, especially due to this scientific acumen and ability of investigating all kind of particularities of Armenian artistic production. His research targeted especially the production linked with the famous school of Cilicia, and especially the heritage of the Patriarchy of Jerusalem. But Professor Chookaszian is also an extraordinary builder of institutions. He is the personality who was behind the initiation of the UNESCO Chair of Armenian Art in the University in Erevan, and also his ability to spur attention, to spur initiatives, to create links between scholars, to create networks, is something that I was able to see on my own, with my own two eyes, as I visited Armenia in 2013 at a congress organized, among others, by Professor Chookaszian and the Moscow UNESCO department. And in Erevan, dedicated to Armenian heritage outside Armenia. The result was that after this conference followed a series of other conferences organized in between the State University of Erevan under the surveillance and the control of Professor Chookaszian, in partnership with the Armenian Union in Romania, with the embassy, and we all know the extraordinary results of this engagement that Professor Chookaszian had with the artistic heritage of the Armenian community in Romania. So I will not bother you any longer with these words of introduction, and I will swiftly pass the floor to our dear guest this evening, Professor Chookaszian, please.
Thank you very much for this introduction. I offer to my young colleague Vlad Bedros, whom I am always happy to see, and I know his monography on Armenian religious architecture of Romania, and it is one of most important surveys on this subject after so many years of works published by Romanian and Armenian scholars on this same topic. And I was very glad when this monography appeared, and hopefully he will continue to work in this direction, not only exploring our religious architectures in Romania, but also other arts of Armenians inside of Romania. And I am very grateful to Armenian Society of Romania, especially the head of society, Mr. Varujan Oskanyan, who is kind of mentor for our work in Romania, and he also did his best for organization of two symposiums here, one on Armenian, Romanian historical and artistic relations, and the other one on Siruni and his role for publicizing Armenian culture in Romania exploration.
E nevoie de traducere sau? Nu. Nu e nevoie.
Okay. So I hope you hear my voice, and this will bring you closer to Armenian art. So during one lecture, it's of course impossible to embrace all Armenian artistic legacy in Romania. And let me to say that it is, to be sincerely with you, that it is impossible to explore everything, and we just started, and due to patronage of His Grace, Bishop Datev, we did several years with my colleagues exploration of artifacts which are collected in Dudian Museum, and hopefully after publication of a book in English and Romanian, we will continue this work and will cover other parts of Armenian art, which is representing Armenian culture in Romania. And many artifacts are not only preserved here and wait for explorers. I am talking about, for instance, portraits and paintings that are hanging here and on the second floor, and the other artifacts, but also in Romanian museums. There are many Armenian artifacts which are represented by different labels, sometimes mentioning Turkey, sometimes mentioning Caucasus, and hopefully, if we will manage to continue our studies here, we can make some difference in expositions of museums if we will start to publish these artifacts and show that they are really made by Armenians in different places. And today I want just to give some comprehension about the Armenian legacy here, Armenian artistic legacy. It is partly representing artifacts that were not devoted, but which are given as gifts, which are presented by Armenian pilgrims, and also from the other part to talk about the artifacts which were created here by Armenians who were settled in Romania, who got here second homeland after their historical homeland. And also I want to give some comprehension about artifacts which were brought here during genocide or after genocide by those who survived. And also I want to not forget to mention those Armenian painters who worked here in 19th and 20th centuries. As I said also, and I want to repeat myself, that we can't cover during one lecture everything which is representing Armenian art and artists here. So let's start with introducing you with certain Armenian churches that were erected in territories which were historically part of Romania and are now out of borders of Romania. For instance, Armenian church in Ackerman, it is now called Belgorod, and this church is preserved it is in these old photographies, and also you can see the other Church of St. Gregory Illuminator in Chernovtsi, which is also part of Ukraine today. And as you see, it is in better shape, it's intact in comparison with other churches. And it's necessary to mention that certain churches, Armenian churches on the territory of present Ukraine, they didn't survive, and Armenian cemeteries were even destroyed during Soviet period. So it's necessary to do such detective work to find materials in archives, old archives, which talk about these churches, or to look on the manuscripts, evidences about those churches. This is a church in Roman, St. Mary Church, and the inscription of 1830 is indicated name of merchant Kalos Bardasarian from Grigoriopolis. And such facts about existence of Armenians in Romania, these facts, they are part of history and part of art history meantime. So it is condensing historical memory of Armenia, and historical memory of Armenia is preserved due to these artworks which are scattered in different countries and in different libraries. Manuscripts are telling about that, remnants of churches or tomb sculptures are telling about that. And as I said, there are donations of Armenian pilgrims to Armenian churches, and not only pilgrims, but also those who were in Armenian communities living on the territories which were part of Romania. This chalice from silver is donated to Armenian Church of Holy Virgin of Ismail in 18th century. And it is reflecting the treasures, the features, of those Armenian silversmiths who were working in Istanbul, and in Istanbul or Constantinople. There were Armenian silversmiths working since the beginning of Ottoman Empire. And up to now, the market of Armenian silversmiths in Constantinople is quite famous. And even when there was such exodus of Armenian silversmiths to Europe, or mostly to America, and especially to Los Angeles. So here is a silver cross of 1642, and it is preserved in Lviv or Lvov in historical in Museum of History, and it was belonging to Minas Tokatesi, who was born in Tokat, who was poet, and meantime he and his wife Pirus, who was from Khotin, it is Polish territories, and so they donated this cross, and this is, I think, the only evidence which is talking about donation of Minas Tokatesi. He is mostly known as a poet and author of different verses. And this is another silver chalice, and one of those liturgical specimens that were donated to Church of Holy Virgin of Kilia, and it was donated in 1682. And again, the traditions are connected with the works of silversmiths of Istanbul. But I have to mention that parallelly to the activity of Armenian silversmiths in Istanbul, there was also flourishing the school of silversmiths in Lvov, and Armenian silversmiths who were living in Lvov in 16th, 17th centuries and later on, they have produced numerous things for the nobility, Polish nobility, and also even for Polish kings, Jan Sobieski, for instance, and other kings. This is radiating cross which was made and donated to Armenian Church of Holy Virgin in Kilia by Mahtesi Harutyun in 1744. Mahtesi, this is title which was given to Armenians who were going to pilgrimage to see Holy Grave, to visit Jerusalem, and they were called Mahtesi. And it was kind of honor that they were carrying this name. Haji, yes. And as the Muslims were going to Mecca and becoming Haji, so Armenians also were sometimes calling that they are Haji and showing their arm with a blue cross on their arm. And even one of my relatives always proudly was showing this. And this radiating cross, with its own traditions, has very strong similarity with specimens which are preserved, for instance, in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem Armenian monastery of St. James, there is exactly the same type radiating cross, again with enamels, and it is published in Armenian Art Treasures of Jerusalem, in the book which was made by Bezalel Narkis and Michael Stone, published in 1979. So this is really connected with Istanbul, this radiating cross. And this is inscription which is preserved on this radiating cross, and it says that it was really given by Mahtesi Harutyun. And Vienna Mekhitarist congregation preserves many manuscripts which are made in Crimea, in Armenian communities in former Ukraine, and also this illustration is decorating Gospel of 1624, written and illustrated in Suceava. And as we know that this is not only a manuscript copied in Suceava. We know that for certain periods in 17th century, the head of Armenian monastery of Suceava was Azar Babertatsi. Azar Babertatsi was an eminent figure in Armenian church and scribe and illustrator and poet. And this prominent figure deserves more thoughtfully exploration. Of course, scholars mention his name in their books, but as the manuscripts are scattered of this person, they are preserved in Vienna Mohitarist congregation, and recently there was found a small manuscript of this scribe, but also certain manuscripts are in Jerusalem, Armenian monastery, and in Erevan Matenadaran. So almost 7 or 8 manuscripts are known from Lazar Babertatsi. I want to show you certain manuscripts, but before it, you can observe the Saint Oxent monastery of Suceava. And here we are dealing with illustration of Lazar Babertatsi. This is self-portrait. We have self-portraits of Armenian painters and scribes, and up to now we haven't yet gathered all examples of self-portraits, and this is a very interesting phenomena, because in Europe, in self-portraits of painters, they appear in 12th century already, but I'm talking about Western Europe. And the really portraits with more realistic features, they appear later. They appear at the end of 13th century, beginning of 14th century, and let's say that Armenian self-portraits, they are among the oldest, because if we are talking about Italian proto-Renaissance portraits, let's say of Cimabue or Giunta Pisano, and this, we have only written sources about their self-portraits, but really Armenian self-portraits are represented already in 13th century, and not only in 13th century, but at the beginning of 14th century already we have several, and even Sarkis Pizak, that we will talk about him soon, he has several self-portraits that have come down to us. How many he created, we don't know, because not many manuscripts survived with his self-portraits. We have about 70 manuscripts copied and illustrated by him, which is unusual phenomena in the world art history. There is no such a thing that 70 manuscripts, almost 70 manuscripts are containing illustrations of one painter. So, this is Lazar Babertatsi, and this manuscript is dated by 1612, and it is in Jerusalem, Armenian Patriarchate. The next manuscript is also, the next illustration, which is showing Last Judgment, is also his manuscript and from the same collection. And this one is from Mohitarist collection and made in 1624 by Lazar Babertatsi. This is representing Ascension. And next one is also his work, also same collection. And this is Evangelist Matthew from his manuscript. And this is again Vienna manuscript, another one, made in 1628 by Lazar Babertatsi. And there are certain artifacts. Yes, sure. There, as he was living in different places, so he was working in different scriptorias. Not all are made in Suceava, and now I want to introduce you with altar curtain from Suceava, which was donated to Armenian Church of Holy Echmeazin. It was created in 1663 and created in memory of Alexander of Focșani, his son Mahtesi Vartan. So in our collections there are some other artifacts also which are connected with Romanian Armenian communities of different epochs. Oh, sorry. And now I want to introduce you with certain paintings of those Armenian painters who were educated or who received their education. Thank you. Sorry. So, certain Armenian painters or Armenian painters who lived in Romania, they were educated in Romanian art schools or out of Romania. For instance, in München Arts Academy. And in this case, we are dealing with a landscape created by Teodor Buiuclu. And this is hanging in the National Museum of Art in Bucharest, and the expositions in Bucharest museums, they give food for our service, but it is not enough. We don't know what is preserved in depositories, and in some other museums I haven't met works of this painter hanging on the wall, but it is interesting the period of his activity is till the end of 19th century. I think he is immediately after Theodor Aman, who established a School of Art in 1964. And I have to mention that I have heard from my colleagues that Aman has Armenian origins. And unfortunately, we don't have historical test proofs, sources that are talking about him, and that's why I didn't include him, but his works. But I have to mention that there are such rumors, let's say, and. Anyway, this is a very good painter. Judging from this only painting, this realistic style in his works is talking about his also professional niveau. Another painter who is considered as one of the most famous Hungarian painters, Simon Holosi. He was born in Romania, and he lived in Biela Mare, Baia Mare, sorry for my pronunciation of Romanian names, and he lived there, he produced there many works, and he was teaching also, and his works are hanging in Hungarian museums, and interesting painter who had connections with another Armenian painter, Hamayak Hagopian, whose work is very well preserved in our National Gallery in Erevan. Numerous paintings, about a couple of hundreds. And next, very interesting painter, it's Abgar Baltazar. When I am observing his paintings in different museums of Bucharest, I'm thinking about his professional high quality of his brush. These two, I will show you two portraits, but I have special admiration for his landscapes, and I will tell you why. In this case, here we have a portrait of unknown person, and now then another one, again, unknown lady, but these are excellent portraits. And you can just have sorry for this painter that he lived only 29 years. Let's see his landscape. When I am observing his landscapes, as I am looking on it from professional point of view, I see that he is understanding very well where must be put the most emotional accents, color accents, especially reds, red dots or red is used in certain cases, making more dynamic the painting. And another painter who attracted my attention in museums of Bucharest is Nuci Agons. Nuci Agons, as much I can judge from her family name, is originating from some well-known family, because we have another famous Agons in our history who was head of Mekhitarist congregation in Venice. And Agons, this family is very rare, and if they are coming from Transylvania, as much as I know, this is a very interesting phenomena that from this family there is such a good painter. Yesterday I saw another painting of her in the Museum of Collections, which was unknown to me. And coming to other part of my lecture, it is about manuscripts that were brought to Romania from other places. They are not produced inside of Romania, but they are showing and telling about the exodus of Armenians from different territories, from historical homeland and from other communities, other colonies. For instance, this manuscript, which is preserved here in Dudian Museum, it's considered to be a work of Armenian painters of Crimea. Unfortunately, there is no other manuscript which has strong similarities with these illustrations. And this is made in Kafa, in Crimea. Kafa is present Theodosia, which was a very famous Armenian community during 13th and 17th centuries. And even later Armenians lived there, and our famous sea painter Ioannis Aivazovski, his life is connected with Theodosia, he lived there. This is from the same manuscript. Unfortunately, the manuscript is illustrated only with portraits of evangelists and marginal illustrations and title pages, but there are no scenes of life of Christ. This is also, this work, this manuscript is also made in Crimea, but in Surkhat, in a city called Surkhat, which is originating from words Surkhat.
Holy Cross.
Holy Cross, yeah. And this is preserved in Cluj-Napoca city archives, and it is copied by Diacon Kyrakos, and again, like the previous manuscript, it is showing the migration of Armenians from Crimea to Romania. I have included in my lectures this pastoral letter of 1466 of Catholicos Aristakes II, It is preserved in Venice, Mehitaris congregation. I have included this in my lecture because not of quality of illustration, which is very much damaged. It is showing Gregory Illuminator, King Turdata, and Saint Ripsime, martyr. But I have included it here because here, Catholicos of all Armenians, he is addressing Armenian people in Galicia, Podolia, Bukovina, Moldavia, and he is talking about unification of Armenians. He is mentioning Kamenets, Suceava, Siret, and other places. So this is showing that Armenian communities were very strong at this period in different places in former Polish and also Romanian territories. And it's interesting source for exploration of Armenian communities. And this Armenian church crown, gilded silver, is preserved in Iași Museum, and it is dated by 17th, 18th centuries. Unfortunately, the exploration of this crown is not made. I just discovered it in one of books, which is not related really to Romania. And another manuscript, which is brought by Armenians from a historical homeland and made in Taron in 1306, it is again preserved in Cluj-Napoca in city archives, copied by Hovhannes, commissioned by priest Hovsep. I have to mention that manuscripts that have come down to us from Taron in 13th or 14th century, there are not so much preserved. Maybe they are still preserved in certain depositories in the depots of some Turkish museums, but they never put in scholarly circulation. And there many artifacts are still unknown to us. Many Armenian artifacts, year by year, appear books where we discover absolutely unknown artworks, which tell about talents and genius of Armenian painters, silversmiths, and carpet weavers. Another manuscript, which is again in Cluj-Napoca, it is originating from Cyprus, from Famagusta, and it is made between 1310, 1312, and it doesn't have numerous illustrations, but it is interesting because manuscripts copied and illustrated in Cyprus, they are not only very much known, but I guess they are even not much preserved. And the existence of Armenians in Cyprus, we can follow through the manuscripts, colophons, and certain manuscripts which are really connected with Cyprus. And as Cyprus is not far from Cilicia, so many painters who moved to Cyprus, they are continuing traditions of Cilician book illumination. Like this title page is showing initial, which is composed by two peacocks. We know that this specific letter, decorated in this specific way, is known from already 12th century manuscripts made in Cilicia, and then it is reproduced again in 13th century Cilician manuscripts and in 14th century manuscripts. So this is one of most popular forms of illustration of this letter Z. Now we are coming to a manuscript which is illustrated by Sarkis Pitsak during the first half of 14th century. We know that the first manuscript illustrated by Pitsak is dated by 1312, and he is mentioned there that he helped his father, Grigor Pitsak, and the Oldest manuscript is dated by 60s already. In 1360s, there were several manuscripts scattered in different collections. Let's say in Ireland, in Dublin, Chester Beatty Library, in British Library, in New York Public Library, in Jerusalem, in Armenian Monastery, in Erevan Matenadaran, in State Hermitage Museum, and etc. So, Sarkis Pițac is introduced through many manuscripts, but in many manuscripts he did only part of illustration, and the rest of illustration is made by his assistants. So maybe that is the reason why there are so many manuscripts preserved with his illustrations. And as the scholars mentioned, there is impression that he got most of orders from the royal court, from nobility, for his manuscripts. Another manuscript that came to Armenia from Romania and is preserved in Erevan Matenadaran. It is again Gospel of 14th century, and this is also considered a work of Sarkis Pițac. The style of Sarkis Pițac is impossible to not recognize if you are familiar, really familiar with his style. And in certain museums in Bucharest, there are artifacts which are made, in my opinion, made by Armenians. I want to pay your attention on two bracelets, which are the upper one from the left, and these three bracelets that you see, the middle bracelet and upper one, they remind the works of Sebastian, silversmiths of end of 18th century and the beginning of 19th century. I am pretty sure about this because one of my relatives, he has exactly same bracelet or similar type, and he is one of descendants of Sebastian. And there is nothing mentioned that it is Armenian work. And here you see Armenian belt, the second upper one. The upper one, it is from a Museum of Collections. Again, there is not mentioned anything. See this one, the upper one. And now we are coming to textiles. This iconostasis curtain, brocades with silk, with silk gilt thread. It is made in Bursa workshop. In my personal library, I have a book of Turkish author. It is a survey in Turkish, completely about textile production in Bursa. And the author is really writing that production of textiles was mostly in the hands of Armenians. And Bursa textiles, they are scattered in different museums, not only here in Bucharest, but also you can see them in Berlin museums, you can see in Gallus Gulbenkian Museum in Lisbon, and in other places. And this is again made in Bursa. This one also. And this carpet I saw in Bucharest Museum of Collections, and this carpet is introducing us with history of Abraham and Isaac. It's Isaac, and certain carpets made in Iran at the end of 17th century, 18th century, they have compositions from old and New Testament, which is absolutely not typical for Persian carpets. It is made by Armenian craftsmen, especially in northern Iran. I'm talking about northern Iran, which is bordering with Azerbaijan. I'm sorry, here, another example, which is which has sister parallels with the production, with the different artifacts made by silversmiths from Van in 18th century. It is made in Nielo technique or Sevada technique, Sevad as they call in Armenian. And these silversmiths, they were practicing the same technique and produced thousands of things, They were producing all kind of things, liturgical vessels, covers of manuscripts, decoration for women, and etc., etc. And you can imagine that with the facts registered in Armenian press of beginning of 19th century, they were exporting in 1903, 1905, they were exporting to Europe around 3,000 or 4,000 portcigars, silver portcigars. You can imagine, only portcigars, and decorating with different motifs, ornamental and etc. Again, a work of Bursa, bishop's robe. And I want to finish my lecture with the work of Hrant Avakian, a painter who was born in Aleppo, then in 1920 he settled in Romania, received here artistic education, became painter and renovator restorator of paintings, who collected during his life numerous things, and they are exposed here. And as I said already, it's impossible to include everything. This is just giving some flavor of Armenian art in Romania, and those artifacts are still waiting of their explorers. Hopefully not only Armenian, but also Romanian. I am looking forward with optimism that we will find numerous Romanian colleagues who can collaborate with us in this field and also explore artifacts from depositories, not only from expositions. And this is so. It's an ocean of work is waiting us, and hopefully Armenians will support their foreign colleagues and encourage them with joint forces to explore this legacy. If you have questions, you can ask me. I will try to answer to questions, but I don't promise that I will answer to all questions. It's impossible, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chookaszian, for showcasing us so masterly the complexity of the Armenian heritage, the Armenian artistic heritage in Romania, and the exchange that took place between other Armenian colonies and the one in Romania. So the floor is open now for questions. Of course, questions in Romanian are highly encouraged, and I will provide translation in English or in Armenian. In Armenian, I will not be able to.
There is question, Mr. Hovsep. I wait for most difficult.
It is an absolutely amazing thing that somebody studies all these historical facts and brings them to us, and I would like to thank you for that. I would have just a small remark and a joke. Hotin was not Polish. Hotin was Romanian, was Moldavian.
Not always Polish.
I was there, and I remember that the Ukraine guide told me, look how we did everything as it was and so on. And I said, I have a question. Should I understand that Moldavia was up here? Yes, yes. And over the river are the Polish cities, yes, yes. But where were you?
Do you want to answer to your own question?
No. Just a joke. But Hotin was Moldavian. Was the most the northest village. It was not exactly a city. The northest village of Moldavia in that times.
Stefan the Great.
Thank you.
During some of the times, not all the times. That's important
Yes,
to
some.
remember. So that's
All the times, the history there.
In our mind,
related
was
to the
always.
joke that I had.
In our mind. So, now you are in Hotin, I understand.
Crossing borders. On a very, very nice wooden chair that I enjoy.
Wooden churches.
No any other mistakes?
That was not a mistake.
It was historical mistake.
It was just an
History.
occurrence.
History made this mistake and confused scholars.
I have a question related to the artifacts that you discovered in the Romanian museums. If they were not manufactured here, probably the composition of the materials can say something about where they were built. So maybe we can prove like that they are Armenian artifacts.
I am paying attention not only compositions.
Microphone.
Sorry. I am paying attention not only on compositions, but I'm paying attention on technology and also the features of production and stylistic features. So composition or iconography is not enough.
No. I was talking about the composition of the metal that they were done by, because the same kind of metal is different from one mine to the other. So we can trace exactly the place where they were extracted, the silver, for instance, and that became part of the artifact. So maybe we can use that if they allow us to study this, because this means to harm a bit the object.
The silver that Armenian silversmiths used, it was coming from Gümüşhane area. But unfortunately, there are no specific surveys of analysis of these silver artifacts. In certain cases, there is made analysis of gold artifacts from gold that show that the gold is from mines of Sotk, which is now partly invaded by Azeris, and it is near Sevan Lake, and there is a lot of gold that Russians are taking to Russia, and now part of it is invaded by Azeris. I am talking about very old ritons from gold made during Urartian period and preserved in Erevan. Ritons. first century or third century returns the same quality of gold.
I would like to ask you, do you know the book of Silvia Hagemian? The miniature, the Armenian miniature.
The illustrations, which are from manuscripts of Cluj-Napoca collection, are taken from her book.
And the illustration of the first Bible, 1351. It's from here, and it's subject of the whole book.
I have that book in my library, and I've used it many times. I know her personally.
Do you have in French?
I have in French.
Yeah.
This is her PhD work that she did many years ago. She's one of the best. She's one of the best experts of Armenian book illumination.
She's alive?
Yeah.
She's alive.
She is head of Sursok Museum in Beirut.
Thank you. Ես ուրիշ բան ուզեի հարցնել ձեզի, կապ չունի անպայման այսօրվա նյութին հետ։ Միայն թե ուզեի վերջնական պատասխան մտակ հարային Գերլայի այդ նկարը, որ Ռուբենսի եւ իրենք այնտեղ շատ գշակորձեն այդ գաղափարը եւ նույնիսկ վերջերս կարտացի թե բան ունեցած են տուրիստական խումբեր մասնավոր կացած են այդ Ռուբենսի այդպես կոչված Ռուբենսի նկարը դիտելու դուք 10 տարի առաջ ինձ ասած եք որ վճռականապես Ռուբենսին չի գնարել շատ Ռուբենսի դպրոցը դուք կրնաք հիմա ասել թե ինչ է ձեր գարձիկը ճշգրիտ շնորհակալ
In 1979, I have published a paper in Wiener Jahrbuch für Kunstgeschichte. This is Vienna yearbook on art history. The paper is called Rubens and Armenians. Year before there was anniversary of Rubens. I have published in historical philological journal paper I gave with the same title, and the editor or somebody there just before the journal came out of press, they have changed the title. And I have used their sources that were published, certain documents from Transylvania about the fact that Armenians constructed a church in Gerla, and then they came to Austrian emperor and asked him for painting for their new built church. And as they have helped Austrian emperor during Napoleonian wars, so he ordered to give them painting from Belvedere Museum in Vienna. And I have published this. But then same year I have met my very dear colleague Helmut Buschhausen from Vienna University Byzantine Institute, and I told him about this, and I was regretting that my paper appeared with absolutely another title, that Rubens is not mentioned there. I have gathered there all kind of artifacts which were related to knowledge of art of Rubens, not only this specific painting. And I told to Buchhausen that maybe the documentation is still preserved in Belvedere archive about this painting. He promised to look at it, and he found really the record about this painting. And this painting is registered in Belvedere Museum archives as a work of Joachim von Sandrart, who was very much fond of Rubens, who copied his works many times, and he copied the same painting, which is a part of triptych in Antwerpen Cathedral. And after many decades, I visited Antwerpen. I saw this original, and it is with marvelous colors. And finally, I was connected with this painting. It was photographed before painting. But coming back to Buchhausen and to this article, he suggested that I will translate it into German, and he will help to publish in this famous yearbook. It was published in 1979 with comments, with facts from Belvedere Museum. So finally it was put into circulation, this paper, as Rubens and Armenians. So it is Joachim von Sandrart. Armenians are continuing to mention that it is Rubens. This is not Rubens.
Yeah, they're convinced that it's a school of Rubens.
Unfortunately, Armenians don't have access to this yearbook. They don't have it in many libraries, so.
But it's a beautiful story, so they should keep telling.
Illusions. Illusions are very sweet.
Sometimes legend could create reality.
Yeah.
I have a new question.
Any question?
Good evening, everybody. I'm glad to be here, first of all. I kept my attention to a knife that was... Knife and fork, yes. From Bucharest Museum of Collections, if I am not mistaken. If somebody doesn't remember, it was
Turkey, 18th century.
Yes, the question was about the Turkey, that it was mentioned Turkey. Probably if I was there without joining this lecture, I would think that it was art of Turkey without even maybe thinking of Armenians. So my question is, can it be changed, or maybe just mentioned that it was that they're Armenian masters living and making this art in Turkey? Because I was in several museums in Romania, they were always mentioning that there are Turkey collections, but nothing about Armenians. It would be nice for me to hear that it is Armenian, of course, to be proud. But for others, maybe Romanians, maybe other tourists that joining this museum, can it be possible to change or mention?
It is necessary to speak with administration and with the experts who are giving advices for expositions. And in certain cases, it is very, very important to pay attention to that. Mainly, Armenians are not mentioned. I saw once a French paintings exposition in Metropolitan Museum in New York. There was work of Edgar Shahin, represented as work of French painter. And then I looked in their catalogs. I saw they have 66 works of Shahin, 66. And you can see Shahin's work everywhere. Even in the Museum of Collections, I saw once work of Shahin, which is not exposed now. I don't remember of who was the collector of that, because we came with a group for symposium, and we were waiting in airport. The other colleagues who were coming from Transylvania, and the museum was open and they were waiting us. We came there and very quickly we passed through different collections because we were in a hurry to come for banquet or something, and I immediately saw Shahin's work in exposition, but 2-3 times I was there since that period.
Come
never.
back and stay longer, and then make all the corrections, and they will be happy to correct it.
It's not so easy.
No,
I mean, I don't remember that there was written Shahin is French painter. I saw that it is written Shahin, but in other cases we made a special trip to Walter's Art Gallery with one lawyer from Chicago to change the label of rifle that Sultan, Turkish Sultan, Ottoman Sultan, ordered it during 1717 and 1720, and there was mentioned that it is Duz Orli, Han Duz Orli, and this is representative of famous amiras in Constantinople, Duzians, who were had for many years they were heads of treasury of Sultan, and the rifle was covered with gold, numerous brilliants, numerous rubies, and luxury item so much. And we went there with lawyers. We Karnik Kirkonian, and he's from Chicago, and we asked for appointment, and officially his office, law office, wrote to museum administration. They gave appointment, we went there, and we were talking about this rifle, and that Duzian was responsible for work of many people, because these diamonds, you know, they are very small, so numerous, hundreds of diamonds were cut. It cannot be a work of one, diamond cutter or goldsmiths. It is a work of many people, and so he was responsible for all work. And so most of them were Armenians. So they have changed the label.
Thank you.
Aș mai întreba Lăpadar bunic, imediat văzut. Lăpadar bunic, am fost miter Radaragel, Titlul legi? Aveți intenția să publicați într-o carte subiectul?
It's necessary to dig forward to find more facts.
Yes. I'm Gilbert Keshmanian. I'm here in Romania from 30 years. I'm French, and I love this community. It's very closed. And your work is very, very, very hard, what you're doing. But I would like to give you only one idea. What we see is very, very nice for us. I take this for bring my kids to be more Armenian. It's very important. Then I would like to explain to you to make not a movie, to make on the TV an emission, a document. I would like to have this document with what you talk here with us, with this picture, because I want to have something from you, for your community, and for the Romanian people, and for the other. It's very important to make you an emission on the TV emission. You can talk with Mr. Vosganian, I know everybody here, to make something this whole. It's very important what you do for us. We need this to be more stronger. You understand? Thank you very much.
Can I answer? Please. No, I don't need microphone. So today we had a meeting with the rector of the University of Bucharest, and we decided together with Mr. Levon Chookaszian to organize for next year maybe the second half of the next year, a symposium under the umbrella of the University of Bucharest on the Casa Universitară, a vintage, very brilliant place, about the contribution of the Armenian community to the Romanian culture, art and civilization. And on that occasion we'll present a documentary, started today with this presentation put on movie. So, and both your recommendations will be realistic and we could enjoy with us next year, the second year, maybe September or October. At the same time, I want to inform you that Mr. Chookaszian will take part to the team creating an encyclopedia of Armenian community in Romania, when we put together personalities, Armenian press, Armenian culture, diplomats, priests, and so on and so on. And of course, our bishop, Tateva Gopian, will be part 2 on this encyclopedia. It's a very hard work of, I know, 5 years, 6, 7 years, but it will be a masterpiece presenting all the heritage, Armenian heritage in Romania and in diaspora in the world, starting with source of Romania.
As it is
Very well.
known today.
Please?
As it is known today.
Yes. Unfortunately, we are not very well known. There are people, they don't know that Gherla is Armenopolis, for example. And the word Gherla, prison, comes from Armenian heritage.
From the top, yeah.
Not because Armenians were in prison.
If there are no any other questions, so I want to thank you that such a busy day after your work you came to hear this lecture, and of course this is not Sunday, not a free day, but you have sacrificed your time. You came, and I hope that you don't regret that you came and heard this talk, and it gives, I'm sure, food to thought that we need all this legacy to bring to attention of people not only inside of Romania but also outside of Romania, because we can't say that Armenian art is art of Armenia. Georgians can say that Georgian art is art of Georgia, because everything is accumulated inside of Georgia. Our art is including art of diasporas, of Armenian communities during centuries, from those churches, Armenian abandoned churches in Bangladesh, Ceylon, India, in jungles, in ruins, and in cemeteries of Armenians in Madras, Calcutta, and in the Middle East, in Iran, in Isfahan, in churches and murals of monasteries of Isfahan, and Eastern Europe is full of Armenian art. So we are trying to register Armenian art inside of not only Romania, but also Poland, Bulgaria, and Germany, and even Switzerland, and we explore French archives, historical archives. We are full of documentation. And today I have sent 2 articles to Mr. Arjan Oskanyan about one painter, Grigor Karapetyan, who received his education in France. And many Armenians were educated in France and lived in different diasporas in America and Europe. Thank you very much.